Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
I didn't mean to steal anything, it's just minus 20 outside. The man switched on the light and saw a skinny boy curled up in the corner of his garage. And when he got a closer look at the boy's face, Santiago Suarez's garage was always in perfect order. Every tool was in its place, the floors were swept twice a day, even in winter when clients' boots brought in muddy puddles. Santiago's workshop was well known around town. People even came from neighboring areas because they knew, if Santiago worked on your car, it would run like clockwork. Santiago wiped a wrench with a rag and carefully placed it on the metal stand. His long fingers, roughened with calluses and stained with machine oil, ran over the workbench, checking if everything was in place. The clock on the wall showed 8:30 in the evening. Time to head home. He sighed, took off his greasy overalls, and hung them on a hook by the entrance. He didn't really want to go home. Only empty rooms and silence awaited him there. 3 years had passed since Veronica's death, but the house never felt like home again, just a place to sleep. The walls seemed soaked with sorrow, and every corner reminded him of her. There stood her favorite armchair, and over there, the shelf with the paperback novels she loved to read in the evenings. Santiago grabbed a bottle of mineral water from the fridge in the back room and took a few sips. Out of habit, he noted that the supply was running low, he would have to buy more. Veronica used to take care of that. Santiago, we're running low on salt. Santiago, could you take out the trash, please? Now he had to keep track of everything himself. His wife had died suddenly, heart failure. 40 years old, no health problems, and then, the end. All right, Santiago said aloud, breaking the garage's silence. Enough moping. He flicked the switch, plunging the workshop into darkness. Only a dim light above the emergency exit stayed on. Santiago was heading for the door when he heard a soft rustle near the far shelves. He froze. It didn't sound like a mouse or the creak of the floorboards. Something, or someone, was moving in the dark. Hey! Santiago called sharply. Who's there? Silence. Santiago slowly reached for the workbench. His fingers found the crowbar lying there. I'm turning the lights back on, he warned, and you'd better show yourself, or I'll call the police. Click, the bright light flooded the room. Santiago squinted, peering into the far corner where the noise had come from. I'm here, a quiet voice said. A skinny teenager cautiously stepped out from behind an old cabinet full of spare parts. He looked about 14 or 15. His tattered jacket was clearly secondhand, his jeans were dirty, and a fresh black eye was blooming dark purple under one eye. Who are you? Santiago asked, still holding the crowbar. How did you get in? The boy shifted nervously from foot to foot, his eyes darting around the garage as if looking for an escape route. The lock on the back door. It doesn't hold well. I wasn't trying to steal anything, I swear. It's just minus 15 outside, and I have nowhere to go. Santiago lowered the crowbar. Something in the boy's voice, and his lost look, made him relax his grip. What's your name? Gabriel. What are you doing outside in this freezing weather, Gabriel? The boy dropped his gaze, his shoulders tense as if bracing for a blow. I ran away from home, he finally muttered. I can't stay there anymore. Do your parents know where you are? At that, Gabriel gave a bitter smile. Beneath the grime and bruises, Santiago could see the features of a once handsome boy. My mom's working a night shift at the hospital. And her husband, he stumbled over the word, he doesn't care where I am. As long as I stay out of his way when he's drinking. Santiago felt something tighten inside. The scene was all too familiar. As a boy, he had often hidden from his drunken father, in sheds, at neighbors' houses, anywhere just to stay out of sight when the man stumbled home drunk. Did he give you that shiner? Santiago asked, nodding at the bruise. Gabriel shrugged. Said I was playing my music too loud. Took away my headphones and, well, yeah. Then he hit me again. He said it so matter-of-factly that Santiago felt uneasy. How long has this been going on? Are you hungry? Santiago changed the subject. Gabriel glanced at him warily but then nodded. Yeah. Santiago went into the back room and pulled out a bag of sandwiches from a cupboard. He often stayed late and always kept food on hand. Veronica had trained him well. You can't work on an empty stomach, Santiago, her voice seemed to echo in the air. Gabriel attacked the food hungrily but tried to eat neatly, without making a mess. His manners hinted that he had once come from a decent home. How long has your mom been with that guy? Santiago asked, sitting down across from him. 2 years, Gabriel replied after swallowing. After my real dad died. He was a truck driver. Crashed on the highway. Sergey showed up about 6 months later. At first, he was fine. Then he lost his job and started drinking. Since then, it's just been fights every day. Santiago nodded grimly. A familiar story, too familiar. Don't you have any relatives you could stay with? Grandparents? My grandma lives out in the countryside, but she only has a room in a shared apartment. And my stepfather knows where she lives, he'd find me right away. And, Gabriel hesitated, Mom would be worse off without me. She's barely holding on as it is, working 2 jobs. I'm scared if I leave, he'll take it out on her. Silence fell in the workshop. Outside, the wind hurled icy snow pellets against the windows. The clock showed 15 minutes to 10. Here's the deal, Santiago said finally. Tonight you stay here. There's a cot in the back. I use it myself when I work late. Clean sheets. We'll figure things out in the morning. Gabriel looked at him cautiously, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Why are you helping me? Santiago didn't know how to answer. Maybe because he had once been that same scared boy. Maybe because he saw in Gabriel's eyes the same fear and loneliness that had haunted him for years. Or maybe because after 3 years of feeling nothing but sorrow after Veronica's death, he finally felt something else, the desire to help. Because it's cold outside, he said simply, and it's warm in here. He showed Gabriel the small shower stall he had installed for himself at the far end of the garage to wash off grease after work. Gave him a clean towel, soap, and an old but clean t-shirt, way too big for the skinny teen. Here. Change after your shower. Then get some sleep, it's late. Gabriel nodded. His eyes still held wariness, but the fear was fading. Thank you, he said awkwardly, unsure how to address him. Santiago, the mechanic, introduced himself. He left the boy to settle in and returned to the workbench, where a disassembled engine awaited, a rush job for a loyal client. Santiago frowned, studying the parts. It would be a tough job. And it was already late. He was exhausted. Behind him, he heard soft footsteps. Turning, he saw Gabriel standing in the doorway of the back room, already changed into the oversized t-shirt. Are you leaving? The boy asked, anxiety in his voice. Santiago glanced at the clock. Almost 11. No one was waiting for him at home, just empty rooms and silence that rang in his ears. No, he decided. I'll stay here. Work a bit more on the engine. You go get some sleep. Gabriel's face lit up with relief. He nodded and disappeared into the back room. Santiago pulled out his tools and bent over the engine. His fingers moved automatically, freeing his mind to wander, to the skinny boy with the black eye, to himself at that age, to his wife who had always known what to say. What would you do in my place, Veronica? He asked silently. And he answered himself, the same. Half an hour later, Santiago peeked into the back room. Gabriel was already asleep, curled up on the cot. Even in sleep, his face was tense, his brow furrowed. Santiago carefully closed the door and went back to work. His hands moved on their own, freeing his mind for heavy thoughts. What should he do with the boy in the morning? Call the police? They would file a report, call his mother, maybe social services would get involved. But Santiago's own experience told him, most of the time, it led nowhere. They would send the boy back home, the stepfather would lie low for a while, then the beatings would start again. Maybe even worse. To a school counselor? Same story. Or maybe they would just turn a blind eye. It happened all the time in working-class neighborhoods. Maybe he should talk to Gabriel's mother? But what could he tell her? Leave your husband? She would reply, and how will we live? Santiago gripped the screwdriver tightly. Memories raced through his mind, his own childhood, his drunk father's tantrums, his mother shielding him with her body, whispering, "Go to your room, son, I'll handle it." He had seen the bruises afterward. By dawn, when the sky outside began to lighten, Santiago finally set aside his tools. The engine was assembled, but his thoughts were not. He still hadn't decided what to do about Gabriel. His heart felt heavy, as if the weight of the engine had settled inside him. Santiago tiptoed into the back room. Gabriel was still sleeping, but more peacefully now. His face had relaxed, his mouth slightly open, just an ordinary boy, one of millions. Except for the blue bruise and the skinny, sharp little shoulders. "What am I going to do with you, kid?" Santiago whispered. And he could have sworn he heard Veronica's soft voice. "Do what your heart tells you, Santiago." He sank down onto an old chair by the wall and closed his eyes. For 3 years after his wife's death, Santiago had existed like a machine, working, eating, sleeping. Not living, just functioning, maintaining his body as a hollow shell. His chest had been empty, as if his heart had died with Veronica. But now, looking at the sleeping boy, he felt something stir inside him, something awakening. And it hurt, but it was the pain of coming back to life, not dying. Santiago leaned back in his chair. 3 hours remained before the garage opened. He could catch a little sleep and then figure out what to do with his unexpected guest. He closed his eyes, listening to the steady breathing of the sleeping teenager. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't dream of Veronica walking farther and farther away down the white hospital corridor. Instead, he dreamed of a warm workshop, where he and some boy were repairing an old motorcycle together. And somehow, in the dream, it felt right. The alarm clock tore Santiago from a deep sleep. He opened his eyes, surprised to find himself still in the garage's back room. His neck was stiff, his back ached. For the first few seconds, he couldn't understand why he was sleeping here and not at home. Then he saw the empty cot with the blanket neatly folded. "Gabriel?" Santiago called, rising and stretching his stiff shoulders. No answer. Had he run away while he slept? Santiago quickly stepped into the main workshop and froze on the threshold. At the workbench, bent over the same engine, stood Gabriel. His hands moved confidently among the parts, and next to him on the table, the tools were neatly lined up, exactly the way Santiago himself liked to arrange them. The steady metallic tapping filled the garage. Gabriel was humming softly to himself, completely absorbed in the work. His movements were steady and precise, with no sign of hesitation or clumsiness. Santiago silently watched, reluctant to interrupt the scene. Yesterday, the engine had only been partially assembled, and there were still problems with the oil pressure regulator. From the looks of it, Gabriel was working on exactly that part. "Good morning," Santiago finally said. Gabriel flinched and straightened up sharply. For a moment, fear flashed across his face, but when he saw Santiago, he visibly relaxed. "Sorry, I didn't ask for permission," the boy said quickly, dropping his gaze. "I woke up early and saw the engine. I thought I might know what the problem was." "And what is it?" Santiago asked calmly, stepping closer. Gabriel glanced up hesitantly, searching Santiago's face for signs of anger. Seeing none, he spoke a little more boldly. "The oil pressure regulator is faulty. I opened it up and found the spring inside had sagged, and the valve was clogged. I cleaned everything and tried adjusting it a bit." He hesitated. "I didn't break anything, I swear." Santiago leaned over the engine, carefully inspecting the boy's work. Usually, clients who attempted repairs themselves only made things worse. But what Gabriel had done? Where did you learn to work like that? Santiago asked, not hiding his surprise. Gabriel shrugged, as if his skills were nothing special. At my grandfather's place in the countryside. I used to stay with him every summer until he passed away 2 years ago. He had an old tractor and a car. He fixed everything himself, and he always took me along. And you fixed a lot of things with him? Gabriel brightened, smiling truly for the first time since they had met. We fixed everything together. When a neighbor's car broke down in the middle of a field, Grandpa and I towed it back home and spent 3 days fixing the carburetor. Grandpa used to say I had a sharp eye and golden hands. The boy's smile faded. Then Grandpa died of a stroke, and Mom brought me to the city. Santiago saw it. The boy wasn't lying. Such skills couldn't be faked. The way Gabriel moved, the confidence with which he handled the tools, it all spoke of real talent and years of practice under a good mentor. Go ahead, Santiago said, stepping away from the workbench. I'll just watch. Gabriel glanced at him uncertainly. Really? Of course. I'm curious. The boy bent over the engine again, his thin fingers deftly working the tools, tightening bolts, checking connections. Santiago fetched some coffee from the back room and settled into a chair nearby, watching the boy work. Does your mom know you learned all this from your grandpa? Santiago asked between sips. Gabriel shook his head without looking up. She didn't like it when I got dirty. Said I should study, not mess around with grease. And my stepfather, well. The boy fell silent, but Santiago understood without needing more. What school do you go to? 123rd. But I haven't been going much lately. Why? Gabriel paused for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. Things got bad with my stepfather. School wasn't a priority. And, he hesitated, lightly touching the bruise under his eye, sometimes I have to stay home when my face looks like this. Teachers start asking questions, threaten to call child services, and that would make things even worse. He paused. And anyway, they don't teach anything useful in school. Math, physics, sure, you need those. But the rest? What for? I'll have to start working as soon as I can anyway. Santiago set his cup down. A familiar story. He himself had dropped out in the 9th grade, gone to work as an apprentice at his uncle's auto shop, and had never regretted it. But times had changed. Nowadays, you can't get anywhere without at least a basic education, Gabriel. You should at least finish school. Gabriel shrugged and went back to work, his face serene in that way people look when they are doing what they love. Santiago watched him, fascinated. How strange. Last night this boy, curled up in a corner of the garage, had looked like a frightened little animal. And today, standing at the workbench, he seemed like a different person, confident, capable, grown up. After 2 hours of steady work, Gabriel straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. I think it's ready. Santiago came closer. The engine was fully assembled, every part in place, everything cleaned, even the hard-to-reach spots. I think we can test it, Gabriel said, if we mount it on the stand. Santiago nodded. Together they carefully transferred the engine to the testing stand, hooked it up, and Santiago turned the key. The engine roared to life, steady, flawless. Gabriel stood beside him, watching the gauges intently. Oil pressure's normal, he said, barely hiding his pride, and the revs are steady. The engine purred like a dream. Santiago checked all the parameters, perfect. The job he had expected to take at least another day had been finished that morning by a 14-year-old. You're a real talent, Santiago said, switching off the engine, and he meant it. Gabriel blushed, but his shy smile showed the praise pleased him. Thanks. Grandpa taught me. He always said, if your hands grow from the right place, you can fix anything. Santiago nodded. A wise man, that grandfather. The bell above the entrance jingled, the first customer of the day. Gabriel immediately shrank back into the shadows, trying to become invisible. Santiago, a familiar booming voice called, "You here?" A burly man in an expensive coat entered, Sergio Vicente, a local entrepreneur and a regular customer, and the owner of the car for which the engine had been repaired. "Good morning, Sergio," Santiago greeted him. "You're early." "Yeah, I thought I'd check on my engine. You said it wouldn't be ready before tomorrow, but I was passing by, figured I'd drop in." Santiago led the client to the test stand. "Your engine's ready. You can see for yourself." Sergio gave him a skeptical look. "Already? You said it would take 2 days at least." Santiago gestured to the engine. "I worked through the night. It's all ready, you can take it now." Sergio examined the engine with a professional eye. He had been a mechanic himself in his younger years, then nodded for Santiago to start it. The engine fired up smoothly and powerfully. "Unbelievable!" Sergio exclaimed, rubbing his hands together in satisfaction. "You're a wizard, Santiago." Out of the corner of his eye, Santiago saw Gabriel watching them from behind the shelving, a silent plea in his eyes. "Tell him it was me." But Santiago said nothing. It wasn't the right time yet. After the pleased client left, handing Santiago double the usual fee without being asked, Gabriel cautiously stepped out of hiding. "Why didn't you tell him I fixed the engine?" he asked bluntly. Santiago spread the client's money out on the table. "Because half of it is yours," he said simply. "You earned it, so take it." Gabriel stared at the money as if it were a pile of gold bars. "But I didn't ask for anything. You already gave me shelter and food." "Work is work," Santiago said. "And work must be paid for." He pushed half the money toward Gabriel. "Take it. You earned it." Gabriel carefully picked up the money, folded it, and slipped it into his jeans pocket. Probably the first money he had ever earned honestly in his life. Santiago remembered the feeling, the pride, the independence. He watched the boy and saw a reflection of himself at that age, a boy from a working-class neighborhood realizing for the first time he could take care of himself. But he also saw what he himself had never had, a normal, loving family where a boy was taught, not beaten, praised for success, not humiliated. They shared sandwiches Santiago had brought. Gabriel ate heartily but still carefully, a sign of good upbringing, before the stepfather had come into the picture. "What do you plan to do now?" Santiago asked, watching him finish his tea. Gabriel set down his cup, his face closing off again. "I don't know. I don't want to go home. But it's freezing outside. Any friends you could stay with?" "No. After we moved to the city, I didn't really make any." "And the ones you did know?" "They've got their own problems." Santiago looked at the clock, 11:30. Soon the garage would be filling with customers, and no decision had been made yet. "Listen," he said, meeting Gabriel's eyes, "I can take you to the police. They'll call your mother, maybe deal with your stepfather. But I'm almost sure in a week everything will go back to the way it was." Gabriel nodded. He was clearly thinking the same thing. "Any relatives farther away? In another city?" "My uncle, my mom's brother. But we haven't spoken since her wedding. They had a falling out." Santiago paced the garage. A dozen ideas ran through his mind, but one, crazy, reckless, kept returning. "Here's the thing," he finally said, "there's one more option. But it would require your mother's agreement." Gabriel tensed. "What option?" "I could apply for temporary guardianship over you." Gabriel stared at him, wide-eyed. "You? But why would you?" Santiago wasn't sure he fully understood himself. He had gotten used to solitude, his routine existence. Taking responsibility for a teenager would turn everything upside down. And yet, in those few hours watching Gabriel work, something had shifted. He didn't just see a homeless kid, he saw a continuation of himself, the boy he might have been if someone had once stepped in to help. He and Veronica had always wanted a son, but life hadn't worked out that way. I need a helper in the garage, Santiago said at last. And you need to finish school and get a proper profession. But you don't even know me, Gabriel protested. Maybe I'm a thief or a troublemaker. Santiago chuckled. A thief wouldn't hide in a corner hoping to spend the night. He would have stolen everything valuable already. And as for a troublemaker, he nodded at the perfectly assembled engine. A troublemaker wouldn't have put that together with such care and love. Gabriel lowered his eyes, but Santiago caught the fleeting smile at the corners of his mouth. And besides, Santiago added, this is a temporary solution until we sort things out with your family. I still need to talk to your mom. He pulled out his phone. What's her number? Gabriel hesitated, then dictated it. Santiago wrote it down but didn't call. Let her rest after her night shift. We'll talk later. For now, he looked Gabriel up and down. You could use some new clothes and a proper breakfast. But I don't have money for new clothes, Gabriel protested. Santiago nodded toward the pocket where the boy had tucked away the money he earned. You have some now. And besides, I can lend you more. You'll pay me back when you earn it, he said, extending his hand to Gabriel. So, do we have a deal? You become my apprentice, and I'll help you with your situation. Gabriel stared at the outstretched hand, as if he couldn't believe what was happening. Then, slowly, he grasped it firmly, like a man. Deal. Santiago felt something warm spread through his chest, something he had almost forgotten, something he hadn't felt since Veronica's illness, hope. On the way to the shopping mall to buy Gabriel new clothes, Santiago mentally reviewed his plan, arranging temporary guardianship, speaking with the boy's mother, possibly dealing with child services. It wouldn't be easy. But as he glanced in the rearview mirror at the quiet boy in the back seat, Santiago knew it would be worth it. For 3 years he had lived like a shadow of himself. Maybe now, helping this boy, he would finally come back to life. Maybe this was his new purpose. Santiago shifted gears, merging onto the main road. The decision was made. Now, it was time to act. Gloria Gonzalez, the child services inspector, looked at Santiago as if he were insane. Her tired eyes behind her glasses showed a mixture of suspicion and disbelief. You do realize this isn't going to be easy, she asked, tapping a pencil against a stack of papers. Guardianship is a serious responsibility, especially over a teenager from a troubled family. Santiago nodded. It was their third meeting that week. The first had been with Gabriel's mother, Natalia, a frail woman with a lifeless gaze. At first, she couldn't believe that a stranger wanted to help her son. Then she cried, thanked him, promised to leave her abusive partner, but refused to press charges against him. I understand, Santiago said. But it's either this, or the boy runs away again. Did you see his bruises? Is that normal? Gloria sighed, flipping through Gabriel's file. No complaint was filed by the mother. She says her son is rude and disrespectful. But the medical report indicates systematic abuse. He cannot go back to that household. I agree. But why you? Gloria peered at him over her glasses. You're not family. You're unmarried. You live alone. My wife died 3 years ago, Santiago said quietly. We never had children. Gloria softened a little, but she didn't back down. I understand you want to help. But guardianship isn't charity. You have to prove you can provide stable conditions, education, development, proper nutrition. Check on me every day if you like, Santiago said firmly. My workshop provides a stable income. I have a 3-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood. I can give him something he's never had, safety. The next 2 weeks turned into an endless cycle of paperwork. Santiago collected documents, attended interviews, obtained references. Gabriel was allowed to live with him temporarily, with official permission, but without long-term guarantees. At first, the case stalled. The neighbors, interviewed by inspectors, described Santiago's reclusive lifestyle. He doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, but he's very reserved. keeps to himself. But positive references from his work, client reviews, and his spotless reputation in town eventually prevailed. The support of Gabriel's school principal also helped. He's a gifted child, she told Santiago when they met. But lately he's been withdrawn, missing classes. If you can give him stability, I fully support this. Gabriel himself blossomed before their eyes. After buying new clothes and proper shoes, he seemed to stand taller. A new haircut, healthy meals, and peaceful sleep without fear quickly transformed his appearance. At Santiago's apartment, Gabriel took the second bedroom, the one originally meant for a child that had remained empty all these years. Santiago bought him a computer for schoolwork, a new desk, and bedding. "Make yourself at home," he told the boy. "This is your room now." Gabriel silently examined the space, gently touching the fresh bedspread. "I've never had my own room before," he finally said. "We lived with my grandmother in a tiny apartment. Later, we moved in with my stepfather." "Now you do," Santiago replied simply and left him to adjust to his new reality. Soon they settled into a rhythm. In the mornings, Santiago drove Gabriel to school, then went to the workshop. After classes, Gabriel would come to the garage, do his homework in the back room, and then help with repairs. The boy had a natural gift for mechanics. He learned quickly, grasped complex concepts intuitively, sometimes better than Santiago himself. At first, customers were wary of the skinny boy in the work overalls. But Gabriel's reputation grew fast. "Gabriel, take a look at my heater," old Miguel, a regular customer, would say. "Something's wrong with the temperature." Gabriel would dive under the dashboard, tinker for a few minutes, problem solved. "Golden hands, that kid." Miguel would marvel. "Just like you, Santiago." Santiago never corrected them. In some ways, Gabriel truly was becoming like him, copying his gestures, his way of speaking, his approach to work. After a month of living together, they attended the final guardianship hearing. Gloria spoke in Santiago's favor. "The boy has clearly improved. He attends school regularly, his grades have risen. The living conditions are excellent. Proper nutrition, a stable environment, all requirements have been met." Gabriel's mother also attended. For the first time, she was sober, wearing clean clothes. Her eyes showed a mix of gratitude and shame. She said quietly, "I agree to the temporary guardianship. My son is better off with Santiago Suarez than with me." But at night, when the house fell silent, Gabriel's past still haunted him. The first incident happened about a week after moving in. Santiago woke up to a piercing scream. He jumped out of bed and rushed to Gabriel's room. The boy was thrashing in bed, crying out and fighting off invisible threats. "No! Don't!" he screamed into the darkness. "Gabriel, wake up," Santiago said gently, touching his shoulder. "It's just a nightmare." The boy opened his eyes, wild and disoriented, then recognized Santiago and shrank back, bracing for scolding. "I'm sorry I woke you," he whispered. "It's all right," Santiago said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Was it a bad dream?" Gabriel nodded, still trembling. "He was chasing me with a belt." Santiago didn't need to ask who he was. He simply placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You're safe now." Gabriel stared at him for a long time, as if trying to believe it. Then, he gave a tiny nod. "Want me to sit with you until you fall asleep?" Santiago offered. "No, it's okay," Gabriel said quickly. "I'm not a little kid." "You know," Santiago said, "when I have nightmares, I turn on a nightlight. Helps a lot." He reached for the bedside lamp. "May I?" Gabriel nodded hesitantly. A soft glow filled the room. "Try to sleep. If you need anything, I'm right next door." In the morning, they didn't talk about it. But from then on, Gabriel always slept with the nightlight on. And Santiago learned to wake up at the slightest noise from the boy's room. The nightmares came regularly, sometimes once a week, sometimes more often. Each time, Santiago sat by his bed patiently, waiting until he calmed down. Sometimes they talked about cars, school, future plans. Sometimes they simply sat in silence. One night, after calming down, Gabriel suddenly asked, "Did you and your wife ever have children?" Santiago froze. They rarely spoke of Veronica. "No," he finally said. "It didn't happen." "Did you want them?" "Very much." Santiago looked out the window at the twinkling city lights. "Very, very much." Gabriel was silent for a long time, thinking. Then he whispered, "You would have been a good dad." Santiago felt something twist painfully inside him. Such simple, childlike words pierced straight through the wall he had built around his heart. "Thank you," he managed to say. After that night, something changed between them. A bond was formed, heart to heart, linking two lonely souls. At the school's parent meeting, Santiago felt a little out of place. Surrounded by mothers in fancy dresses and fathers in business suits, he stood there in a simple shirt. "You're Gabriel Gonzalez's guardian," the homeroom teacher confirmed, checking her list. "Yes," Santiago said. "Santiago Suarez." "I'm very pleased." Gabriel has changed a lot. He's more active in class, caught up with the curriculum. His progress in physics and math is outstanding. Santiago listened, pride swelling in his chest, not for himself, but for Gabriel, for his determination, for his will to learn despite everything. After the meeting, a woman approached him, introducing herself as the mother of one of Gabriel's classmates. "Are you the mechanic who took Gabriel in?" she asked bluntly. Everyone in the class knows the story. Santiago braced himself for judgment, but the woman smiled warmly. "Thank you." "My son Tobias said Gabriel used to be withdrawn, always bruised, often absent. Now he's a different boy. Tobias even made friends with him." Santiago didn't know what to say. He simply nodded and hurried out. On the way home, he thought about how much his life had changed these past weeks. Once, he would return to an empty apartment, turn on the TV for background noise, and eat dinner alone. Now, Gabriel was there, telling him about school, about a new book he found on automotive mechanics, about plans for the weekend. The apartment was full of life. There were magnets and notes on the fridge: buy milk, history homework due Friday. 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom instead of 1. Sometimes music played in the living room, old rock that Santiago himself had loved in his youth. He cooked more now, discovering Gabriel had never tasted many simple homemade dishes: real cutlets, proper borscht, apple pie. Simple joys that had once seemed ordinary now became discoveries for the boy. The day the guardianship was officially finalized, they celebrated with dinner at Santiago's favorite pizzeria. Gabriel was unusually quiet. "Something wrong?" Santiago asked. Gabriel looked up from his plate. "No. It's just, I keep waiting for it to end, for something to go wrong." "Nothing's going to end," Santiago said firmly. "We're a team now, and we'll stay that way, no matter what." Gabriel smiled, open, genuine, for the first time since they met. And Santiago realized the real fight for this boy's future, and for his own, was just beginning. And he was ready to fight it to the end. That evening, as they returned home, Gabriel said, "You know, I don't want to spend the summer at Grandma's anymore. Can I stay here and work with you at the garage?" Santiago understood. The boy wasn't looking for a way to escape anymore. He had found a home. "Of course," Santiago said. "We have to finish fixing Sergio Vincente's car by September." "We'll make it," Gabriel said confidently. "Together, we can do anything." 3 months had passed since Gabriel had moved in. Life settled into a steady rhythm: school, workshop, evenings spent studying or watching TV. Their small world had found the stability they both had long needed. That day, Santiago was finishing work with his last client when the shop bell jingled. He didn't turn immediately, busy adjusting a carburetor. "Just a minute," he called over his shoulder. Almost done. I'll wait, a quiet female voice answered. Something about that voice made Santiago straighten and turn around. Standing by the door was a woman, thin, with a weary face but neatly dressed. Natalia, Gabriel's mother. Santiago wiped his hands on a rag and nodded to his assistant. Pablo, can you finish up here, please? In the back room where Santiago brought Natalia, it had been spotless ever since Gabriel moved in. The boy had organized everything, arranged the mugs by size, tidied the shelves. He wasn't there now. He had gone to extra physics classes at school. Tea? Coffee? Santiago offered, pointing her to a chair. Tea, if possible, Natalia replied. She sat on the edge of the chair, as if afraid to take up too much space. Santiago set the kettle to boil and sat down opposite her. He had seen Natalia a few times, at guardianship hearings, when exchanging documents, but they had never been alone together before. How's Gabriel? She asked, nervously twisting the strap of her bag. He's doing well, Santiago answered. His grades have improved, especially in science subjects. He helps at the workshop too. The kid's got real talent. Natalia nodded, offering a faint smile. Takes after his grandfather. My father was good with his hands too. A pause followed. Santiago poured tea into cups and slid the sugar bowl toward her. I don't even know how to thank you, Natalia finally said, not lifting her eyes. You saved my son. What happened with your partner? Santiago asked directly. Natalia sighed, gripping her cup tighter. I left him. Right after what happened with Gabriel, she said, lifting her gaze, now filled with determination. I filed a police report. He was arrested. Turns out, he was already wanted for something else. And where are you living now? I'm renting a room in a dormitory. I found 2 jobs, working as a nurse at the hospital and cleaning offices at night. She paused. I'm trying to get back on my feet, save money for an apartment, and maybe bring Gabriel back, if he wants to. Santiago felt something tighten inside. Over these months, he had grown used to the boy's presence, their dinners together, talks about cars, working in the garage. The house had become a home again, not just a place to sleep. That's Gabriel's decision, he said at last. But you'll need time to build your life. A dorm room isn't a place for a teenager. Natalia lowered her eyes. I know. That's why I came. Not to take him away right now, just to see him, to know he's okay. Maybe talk, if he wants. Santiago thought for a moment. He had no right to deny a mother a meeting with her son. Besides, Gabriel sometimes asked about her, though he pretended not to care. Gabriel will be home around 6, Santiago said. Come join us for dinner. You know the address. Natalia looked up at him, surprised. Are you sure you don't mind? He's your son, Santiago answered simply. And he'll be glad to see you. He wasn't entirely sure about the last part, but he believed it was the right thing to do. That evening, while preparing dinner, Santiago told Gabriel about his mother's upcoming visit. The boy froze with a textbook in his hands. She's coming here? Why? She wants to see you. She's worried. Gabriel set the book aside. His face closed off. She left me with him. She knew what he was doing and didn't stand up for me. Santiago sat beside him. She left him, Gabriel. Filed a report with the police. She's trying to start over. Gabriel looked at him anxiously. Does she want to take me back? Not yet. First, she wants to get her life together, find a proper place to live. Santiago paused. But even when that happens, the decision will be yours. The doorbell rang exactly at 6. Natalia stood at the threshold, holding a small cake, clearly nervous. Gabriel greeted her cautiously but politely. Dinner began tensely. Natalia barely dared to look at her son. Gabriel answered in short sentences. Santiago tried to keep the conversation going, asking Natalia about her work and plans. The salary's small, but enough for rent and food, Natalia said. Maybe in a year, I'll save up for a down payment on an apartment. There's a social program for healthcare workers. Gabriel picked at his food silently, but Santiago noticed he was listening closely. After dinner, as Natalia prepared to leave, she handed her son a small package. This is for you. I missed your birthday. Gabriel took the package and carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a new smartphone, not the fanciest, but decent. Thank you, he said, looking his mother in the eyes for the first time that evening. Natalia took a hesitant step toward him but stopped, unsure whether to hug him. Can I call you sometimes? She asked softly. Gabriel nodded. That simple gesture seemed to break the dam. Natalia stepped forward and hugged him tightly. Gabriel froze, then slowly wrapped his arms around her too. Santiago turned away, giving them a private moment. A week later, Santiago ran into Natalia at the city clinic corridor. She was leaving a doctor's office, looking tired. Is something wrong? He asked with concern. Natalia shook her head. Just a routine checkup for work. But the doctor says my blood pressure is high. Too much stress. It's hard juggling 2 jobs. Santiago thought for a moment. Besides nursing, what else can you do? Oh, lots of things, Natalia shrugged. I completed bookkeeping courses once, but couldn't find a job. I can sew, cook. One of my clients, Miguel Navarro, owns a cafe chain. He's looking for an administrator, someone with basic accounting skills. It's just one job, but the salary's higher than what you earn from both your jobs combined. Natalia gave him a wary look. Why are you helping me? I abandoned my own son. Santiago shook his head. You didn't abandon him. You stumbled. Now you're trying to fix it. And besides, he smiled, Gabriel will be happier if his mother is happy too. A month later, Natalia was working at Miguel Navarro's cafe. Shortly after, with Santiago's help, she found a small but clean studio apartment near his home. The rent was reasonable, and the landlord, also one of Santiago's clients, agreed to an installment plan for the deposit. Gabriel started seeing his mother more often. At first, they only talked on the phone. Then he began visiting her at the cafe after school. Later, he started spending some weekends at her place. Their relationship was slowly rebuilding, with quarrels, tears, accusations, but most importantly, with dialogue. Santiago watched the process with mixed emotions. On one hand, he was happy for Gabriel, a boy needed his mother. On the other hand, he feared the day Gabriel might choose to live with her permanently. He never showed his fears. Instead, he encouraged their meetings, suggested Gabriel bring her something nice when she was sick. One evening, after Gabriel went to bed, Santiago stayed in the kitchen with a cup of tea, heavy-hearted. That morning, a letter from Child Services arrived. The temporary guardianship was ending in 2 weeks. He would have to either extend it or let Gabriel return to his family. He didn't want to pressure the boy, but he didn't know how to start the conversation. Gabriel seemed happy living with him. Their relationship had long since gone beyond formal guardianship, they were family. But a mother is a mother. Santiago? Gabriel's quiet voice interrupted his thoughts. The boy stood in the doorway in his pajamas. I can't sleep. Something wrong? Santiago asked, setting aside his cup. Gabriel sat across from him. I overheard you talking to Gloria from Child Services about the guardianship ending. Santiago sighed. So, the conversation would happen tonight. Yes, it's ending. We need to decide what happens next. Gabriel looked at him anxiously. Do you want me to go back to my mom? I want you to be happy, Santiago answered honestly. Your mom has changed a lot over these months. She loves you. And I can see that you miss her too. Gabriel lowered his gaze. I do miss her, but I like it here too. Santiago understood his turmoil. At 14, Gabriel faced a choice that would challenge even an adult. "You know," Santiago said after a pause, "you don't have to choose just one." "What do you mean?" Gabriel asked, lifting his head. "We can talk to your mom together." The next day, Natalia came over for dinner. Afterward, when Gabriel went to his room, Santiago explained the situation to her. "The guardianship is ending," he said. "Gabriel needs to decide where he wants to live." Natalia turned pale. "And what did he decide?" "He doesn't want to choose between us," Santiago said gently. "And I understand him." They talked long into the night, about the future, about Gabriel. Natalia cried. Santiago stayed calm, though inside, the thought of losing the boy hurt more than he could say. When Gabriel came back into the kitchen, the air was thick with tension. "Gabriel," Natalia began, wiping away her tears. I want you to come back to me." The boy remained silent, glancing between his mother and Santiago. "But if you're happier here, with Santiago." Her voice broke. "I'll understand." "What if?" Gabriel faltered, searching for words. "What if we could all be together somehow?" Santiago and Natalia exchanged puzzled looks. "What do you mean?" Santiago asked. "I don't know," Gabriel said, lowering his head. "I want to be with Mom, but I don't want to lose you either. You've taught me so much. And I love working in the garage." Santiago thought it over. He looked at Natalia, this woman who had stumbled but was trying so hard to make things right, and at Gabriel, this smart, resilient boy learning to trust again. "I think we can find a way," he said at last. "Gabriel can live with you, Natalia. But he can still come to the garage after school, work with me in the summers. I'll make everything official. And my door will always be open for him," he added, looking at Natalia. "And for you too." Natalia looked up, surprised. There was gratitude in her eyes, and something else Santiago hadn't seen in a woman's eyes since Veronica's death. "Why are you so kind to us?" she asked quietly. Santiago looked first at Gabriel, then back at her. "Because you both deserve a second chance. And maybe I do too." Gloria from Child Services frowned as she reviewed the papers. "A strange arrangement," she muttered. "Usually guardianship is either extended or revoked. This is some kind of hybrid." "It's not a hybrid," Santiago corrected. "It's a family. Just a slightly unusual one." Gloria shook her head but smiled. "In 15 years of working in child services, I've never seen a case end this well. Usually, it's much messier." Santiago shrugged. "We were just lucky to find each other." That evening, after signing all the documents, they sat together at Santiago's kitchen table, discussing practical matters. "Gabriel's things can be moved this weekend," Natalia said. "There's a sofa bed for him in my new apartment. After school, he'll still come to the garage," Santiago added. "And this summer, we'll set up a proper work contract." Gabriel listened to their conversation, smiling thoughtfully. "Can I still sleep here sometimes?" he asked suddenly. "Like when we stay late at the garage?" Santiago and Natalia exchanged glances. "Of course," Santiago said. "Your room will always be here for you." Natalia nodded, agreeing. There was no jealousy or resentment in her eyes, only gratitude and something deeper Santiago didn't dare name. When Gabriel left the kitchen, leaving them alone, Natalia spoke softly. "You know," she said, "when Gabriel ran away from home, I thought my life was over. But it turns out, it was just beginning." Santiago looked at her, truly looked, and saw not just Gabriel's mother, but a woman, tired, yet still young, with a gentle smile and warm eyes. "We all have a second chance," Santiago said. "We just have to be brave enough to take it." Spring came early to the city. The snow melted in March, and by April, the trees had turned green. Gabriel had been living with his mother for 3 months already, but every day after school, he still came to Santiago's workshop, where his own coveralls, embroidered with his name on the pocket, awaited him. A new rhythm of life gradually settled in. On weekends, Santiago often visited them, bringing groceries and helping with small repairs around their apartment. Sometimes, the three of them would go to the park or to the movies together. From the outside, they looked like an ordinary family, even though formally they were not. Gloria from Child Services, who now dropped by simply as a friend, once remarked, "You know, you've created an unusual family model. But it seems to work better than many traditional ones." In May, Natalia unexpectedly lost her job. Miguel's cafe closed due to financial difficulties. When Santiago found out, he immediately offered her help. "My bookkeeping is a complete mess," he said. "Maybe you could take it on? The salary would be no worse than at the cafe." Natalia hesitated. "I don't want to be a burden. You've already done so much for us." "You're not a burden," Santiago insisted. "You're a professional, and I need you. Ask Gabriel, he'll tell you what a disaster my paperwork is." And so, Natalia began working at the workshop. At first, just part-time, then full-time. She quickly organized the documents, set up a proper accounting system, and even created a simple website to attract new clients. The workshop transformed, not just inside, but outside too. Natalia insisted on a new sign, fresh paint for the walls, and flowers on the windowsills. At first, Santiago grumbled, but he soon appreciated the results. The number of clients grew, especially women, who had once avoided the dark, shabby building. Gabriel was blossoming before their eyes. At school, his achievements in physics and math earned him a spot at the citywide academic Olympiad. In the workshop, he was becoming a true master. Clients started asking for him specifically when it came to complex electronics or unusual repair challenges. That summer, when Gabriel officially became a mechanic's assistant, Santiago suggested he participate in the regional model car competition. "You have a talent for engineering," he said. "You need to develop it." Gabriel got excited about the idea. Evenings were spent working together on a racing car model, inventing innovative solutions for speed and maneuverability. Natalia watched their enthusiasm with a smile. She often stayed late at the workshop too, sorting through paperwork, and afterward, they would all head home together, now to Santiago's apartment, where there was more room to work on the models. At some point, it became natural that Natalia and Gabriel spent not only evenings but nights at Santiago's place. At first, it happened occasionally, staying late, bad weather, early mornings, but then it became more frequent. One evening, after Gabriel had already gone to bed, Santiago and Natalia sat together in the kitchen. A warm July breeze blew through the open window. 2 cups of tea stood on the table. "Santiago," Natalia said quietly, "I think we need to talk." He looked up, waiting for her to continue. "Gabriel and I are practically living here. It's not right to take advantage of your kindness forever. Maybe we should move back to our place and just visit on weekends." Santiago covered her hand with his. "What if I don't want you to leave?" Natalia raised her eyes, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Santiago said, "that over this past year, you and Gabriel have become my family. Going back to an empty apartment. I don't want to live in silence again." Natalia looked at him for a long moment, searching for pity or hidden meaning, but she saw only sincerity. "You're asking us to live together?" "I'm asking us to be a family," Santiago said simply. "A real one, with everything that comes with it." Natalia lowered her eyes. "I don't know. It's so sudden." "Think about it," Santiago said gently. "No rush. I'll wait." Natalia didn't have to think long. Within a week, she and Gabriel moved their things into Santiago's apartment, now truly their shared home. Gabriel was overjoyed. He no longer had to split his heart between the two people he loved. By September, their life had found a new rhythm. Gabriel started 9th grade. Natalia fully took over the workshop's bookkeeping. And Santiago. Santiago finally felt he was living, not just existing. At the regional model car competition, Gabriel's car won first place in his class. When he accepted the trophy, he didn't look at the cheering crowd, he looked straight at Santiago and Natalia, standing in the front row. "I'd like to thank my mom and my dad," he said into the microphone. "I couldn't have done it without them." It was the first time Gabriel called Santiago dad. No one mentioned it afterward in the car, but Santiago felt something click into place deep inside his soul. In the winter, just before New Year's, Santiago proposed to Natalia. No grand gestures, just a quiet moment over dinner after Gabriel had gone to bed. "I can't promise you a luxurious life," he said, offering a small velvet box. "But I can promise to always be by your side. In good times and bad." Natalia opened the box. Inside was a simple but elegant ring with a small stone. "It belonged to my mother," Santiago explained. "The only valuable thing she ever had." Natalia stared at the ring, hesitant. "What about Veronica?" she asked softly. Santiago understood. The shadow of his late wife still lingered. "I'll always remember Veronica," he said honestly. "But life goes on. And I want to live it with you and Gabriel." Natalia slipped on the ring. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. They planned the wedding for May. No one was surprised. Everyone who knew their story had been quietly hoping for this ending. Gloria from Child Services even joked, "This must be the happiest ending to a guardianship case I've ever seen." On the day of the wedding, the weather was as warm as summer. The ceremony was small, with just a few close friends. Gabriel, now a tall 15-year-old, stood proudly as Santiago's best man. He had grown so much over the year, but in his eyes, Santiago still saw the boy he had found curled up in the cold garage. After the ceremony, they held a small celebration at their favorite cafe. Gabriel chatted with his classmates. Natalia received congratulations from her new friends. And Santiago stood aside, watching it all with a deep, quiet joy he could hardly believe was real. Gloria approached him with a glass of champagne. "Happy?" she asked. Santiago nodded, taking the glass. "It still feels unbelievable." "I always believed in you," Gloria smiled. "Remember when you said you just got lucky to find each other? It wasn't just luck. It was salvation for all of you." Santiago looked at Natalia, laughing at something Gabriel said, and knew it was true. The cold that had gripped his heart for 3 long years after Veronica's death had finally melted away. That winter night, when he heard a frightened voice in the dark saying, "I'm not a thief, I'm just very cold," hadn't just changed the boy's fate. It had changed all of theirs. Gabriel caught Santiago's gaze and came over, slinging an arm around his shoulders. "What are you thinking about, Dad?" That word, Dad, still brought a lump to Santiago's throat. "About how we met," Santiago said. "That night in the garage." Gabriel grinned. "I thought you were going to kick me out or call the police. And I thought you were there to steal something." They laughed, realizing how far off their first fears had been. Natalia joined them, radiant in her simple white dress. "What's so funny?" she asked. "Remembering our first meeting," Santiago said, wrapping his arm around her waist. Natalia rested her head on his shoulder. "I thank fate every day for that night. If Gabriel hadn't ended up in your garage, then he was meant to," Santiago said simply. "Some things are destined." That night, after the guests had gone and Gabriel had discreetly stayed over at a friend's, Santiago and Natalia sat on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. "You know," Santiago said, "I always thought of myself as a practical man, never believed in fate or chance." Natalia squeezed his hand. "And now?" "Now I know," he smiled. That night, it wasn't just Gabriel who was freezing in the garage. I was freezing too. I just didn't realize it. Natalia kissed him softly. "None of us will ever be cold again. Not ever." Santiago held his wife close, thinking about how life can change in an instant, how choosing not to turn away from a freezing boy could change everything, and how, sometimes, by saving someone else, you end up saving yourself. In the bedroom, once only his and Veronica's, now his and Natalia's, stood a photo on the nightstand, 3 smiling faces, Santiago, Natalia, and Gabriel, standing in front of the workshop with its new sign, Suarez Family Garage. A new beginning. A new life. Real warmth. Gabriel returned home the next morning, loaded down with bags from the supermarket. I decided to make a holiday lunch for our new family, he explained, unloading the groceries onto the kitchen table. Natalia and Santiago exchanged smiles. Neither of them said it aloud, but they both thought the same thing, about the future, about how maybe, just maybe, their family would grow even more. In the house where sadness once lived, hope had moved in. Life went on, a new life, born that cold winter night in a dark garage, when 2 lonely hearts found warmth in each other.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.